Hello and welcome back to PolyTuts. This is the introduction. Timestamp will be on the screen to skip straight to the tutorial, but I'm first just going to briefly cover kind of what it is we'll be learning. So aside from the fact of everything that you're looking at right now, it's just a kind of a more simplified version of the ocean shader that I made with Amplify Shader Editor. And I could have introduced the seafoam stuff, but I just decided not to. It's pretty easy to implement if you want to watch that tutorial and then just kind of apply it to this. But yeah, just wanted to cover a few things. So obviously we have like a different color setup to what it was we were using with Amplify. So this is just like a basic Fresnel type thing. Spoiler alert, I guess. We have the edge foam. We have some pretty sort of primitive depth. We have again like some primitive wave strength and speed and tiling and all that. And much like with this the Amplify tutorial I did, this is all using world space UVs. So if you kind of just keep duplicating out your ocean planes, it's all kind of nice and tiled, so it's all basically pre-projected, so you'll never get any tiling. So that's all pretty cool. Yeah, I don't think there's anything really left to cover in terms of what this will do. So let's just go ahead and get right into the tutorial. Okay, so as usual, let's just go ahead and create ourselves a new shader. And then we'll just create a material from that. And while we're here, we might as well just assign this material to all of our ocean planes. So now we're starting from the very beginning. So let's just open up the shader and let's kind of get started. I'll begin firstly with the color, just because it is pretty simple. So I'm just going to get down 2 color nodes and I will convert these to properties and obviously give them a name. And then all we're going to do is create a Fresnel and we're going to just LWRP these 2 together. As you may have seen from my previous tutorial on this, but I think this one's slightly more simplified. So we'll just get a LWRP and the Fresnel will act as our alpha, and then the A and the B slots are basically going to be our 2 colors. So in case you're unfamiliar with a LWRP, basically I believe at least A will be the white color and B will be the black, and we're using this as the mask. So what is white will be this, unless it's the other way around, but either way the theory is kind of the same. So for now I'll just hook that straight into the albedo and we'll just give this a quick little look at. So we have our color and then I'll just pick the same color but maybe make it a bit darker. Let's just get rid of that. So yeah, you can see it kind of has a slight kind of fall off. So at the moment the darker color is kind of going around the outside, whereas the light is on the inside. And maybe you'd want that the other way around, it's up to you. And so now as we look down into the water, it's kind of darker, and as we look out, it gets a bit lighter. So yeah, that will do for now. We are going to kind of introduce some other things, but yeah, that's kind of it for that. So yeah, let's move on to the normal map next. And if you've seen my previous tutorial on this, then this is pretty much the same thing. The only difference is we're going to be introducing the world space UVs. So let's get ourselves a texture sample 2D, or a sample texture 2D if you say it in the right order. In fact, let's just maximize this because I do get complaints about it being too small. So I could maximize it and then just work like that, and that'll be pretty cool. So texture 2D, so we'll call this one normals. Get that down here, and I will zoom in. I'm not that mean. So yeah, ordinarily, you kind of just hook this straight into your normals after setting the type to normal, of course. But we don't want to use regular UVs. We are going to be using world space UVs. So we'll get down not a world node, I'm thinking of Amplify. Get down a position node with the space set to world. And what we want to do is we want to split this out because basically we want a projection from the X and the Z. And to kind of see if this makes sense, the X and the Z here is the red and the blue. So red is X, blue is Z or Z. I have to stop saying Z, sorry, Z, Z, Z. I'm not American, I promise. And you can see even here that it creates this little, like this is the axis basically. So this like plane here. So this is the plane that we want to create our projection from. So it's the X and the Z. otherwise known in here as R and G, because XYZ is, oh damn it, I did it again, XYZ is RGB. So yeah, we'll do that, split, and then all you want to do is combine. And let's just do this. So we want to combine the red into red, because it's the X, and the Z into green, which might be a little bit confusing, but basically we only want a 2-channel output, and so we put the X and the Z, or the R and the B, into the first 2 outputs. So it's best not to look at this as like an RGBA type thing. We're more like 1, 2, 3, 4, and we only want 2. So that's what we'll do. And that's pretty much it for now. In fact, we won't actually put that right in there, because we'll get ourselves an actual vector 1 so that we can tile this by, you know, a number of our choosing. So yeah, we'll convert that to a property. And yeah, so we'll just put the, not the RGBA, we just want the RNG, and we'll multiply that by our vector 1, which will be our normal tile. And that's what we're going to use for our UVs, at least for now. We're going to make some slight adjustments later when it comes to the panning, but for now this will be fine. So let's just give this a save and then chuck in our normal map. Okay, so that's on there, and you can see sort of as I adjust the scale, it kind of like it scales it up from the center of the world, because these are world space UVs, and this is kind of how you avoid any tiling. So, or rather the seams that you would get. So if I were to just get out this other plane, and if I were even just like to snap this to there, you can see that there's no seams, and it doesn't matter kind of what values we have for this. I think, you know, at the moment I'm using like, you know, 0.71. So, you know, that's pretty handy, because ordinarily if you were just using UVs, even on a tileable texture, but you wanted to have like a tile amount of 0.71, you'd still get tiling when it entered sort of new geometry, but not with this, not with the world space UVs. So pretty cool. So yeah, there's a couple things that we want to do here. First of all, I do want to just introduce a normal strength node, because this particular normal map is just like a grayscale conversion, and it's a bit strong. So there should be a normal scale or normal strength. There we go, normal strength. So we'll just hook that into there, and then we'll just create ourselves a new vector 1, which will turn into a property. And we just call this, you know, normal strength. We'll give this a default value of 1, although I'll probably use a lot lower. In fact, you know, I'm going to give it a default value of 0.3, because, you know, I live life on the edge. And also, while we're here, for the normal tile, you kind of do want the default of that to be at least 1, just because if it's a 0, then what happens is if you kind of use this shader again to create a material and someone puts in a normal map, it will have a default tiling of 0, and so nothing will appear, and it'll look broken, and then they'll kind of just complain, and then you'll say, did you know, yada yada yada. So save yourself the headache and just kind of put it there as a default value. So yeah, we have that, and that's okay. So let's go and get ourselves a vector 1 again. This is just going to be the smoothness. So yeah, convert that to a property, and I'll put a default of maybe 0.8 or so, and stick that into smoothness. Okay, so that's already looking a bit better. Yeah, so now obviously we need to get this moving, and we need to kind of have it panning the other way. So we definitely know that we're going to have 2 of these normal maps, and we're going to need another normal strength, but we can use the same normal strength property that we use here. So we only need to adjust this once, and it will change both. And before we do that, let's just get ourselves a normal blend. I don't know why I said before we do that, because I'd already finished doing that. So yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So let's stick that into normal. So at the moment, this will just blend our 2 normal maps, but one will be using world space and the other one at the moment is not using world space. They will both be using world space. So let's just give ourselves a little bit more space here. But we probably want to keep these guys over here. So we want to get a tiling and offset node, but we definitely don't want to be using the tiling parameter of this, because, you know, we set our own UVs with our own tile amount here. So we don't want to go and, you know, create a conflict or even just, you know, use something else, because we've already created this for ourselves. So yeah, we don't make any use of the tiling amount itself. We do want to use the UVs only because we kind of essentially we need the offset, because we need to animate the offset. And the only way to do that, that I'm aware of at least, is through this node. So we will have to feed our existing UVs through this UV, but it's not like it will do anything new. It will basically just use the UVs that we've set. So we're just saying like our UVs are the UVs to use. So, you know, ignore everything else. So we can even just put that into there just for now, just so we have the offset node to work with. So we need to do some panning. So we're going to need a time node for that because things are going to animate along a time. And we're going to multiply this by a vector 2, and this will be our direction basically. So we can specify, you know, which way the water will move. And so I'll say -1 for now on the X, and I'll leave the Y alone for now. I might change this later, but if you're not sure what this means, I'll just do a little preview in a second. And then we're going to introduce a divide node, and we're going to get down to vector 1. And I'm going to put in a number like 20 here, which I'll explain in a second, because ordinarily you may just kind of use another multiply and you would create another vector 1 which would control the actual speed of the panning. But the reason that I have this divide node in here and this this not property here, so just like a private vector 1, is because the numbers that we get on the material side are kind of like, they're crazy. I've mentioned this before in my other tutorials, but this is a good way to kind of solve that. So we'll get another vector 1, and this one will be a property. So convert that to a property, and this one will be our normal speed, or you can call it pan speed or whatever it is. So that basically completes that. And so this is going to be our offset, because this is our panner. We're going to multiply a vector 2 with time. And so we're specifying an X direction, and then we're just kind of slowing down, or not rather slowing down, we are making this numerical value for our controller, like the speed controller, slightly larger because we are dividing the original result by 20. So this divide and the vector 1, completely optional, but hopefully you'll see what I mean in a second. So let's just hook that in, and we'll give this normal speed, I'm not sure what would be good, we'll give it a default of 0.1, and let's just see what this looks like. Okay, so 0.1 is obviously way too slow, so let's just give it 1. So you can see it moving a bit here, but you may have noticed that, you know, already it kind of looks like there's sort of this glistening water thing happening, and that's because we are actually using 2 normal maps, because we have already blended this normal map with the other one. The only thing that's happening here is one of these normal maps isn't moving and the other one is, but we want them both to move. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And yeah, as I was saying before, so if I keep that at a speed of 1, and you can see how much it moves, if I just forget about this divide by 20 and instead I just go straight for the multiply, let me show you what happens. So there you can see, obviously our water is moving way too fast, which means we need to bring this number down. Maybe it's still too fast. Maybe something like 0.3 or 0.4, or sorry, 0.03 or 4 or 5. And so these numbers are pretty small and annoying, so that's why I kind of prefer to do that divide. So I'll just put that back in there, I get that speed back up to 1, and I'll just resave that. Okay, so let's just maximize this, because we're kind of going to do pretty much the same thing, just we're going to mess with the UVs of the second normal map, and we're also going to mess with the direction in which it pans. So for now, let's just go ahead and we'll even kind of copy all of this, just because it'll make it a bit easier. But let's put this combine into our UVs, and we'll just stick this into the UV of our second normal map. So yeah, at the moment we're kind of saying that it will use the same tile amount and the same speed and the same direction. So we want to for sure change the tiling amount. So now this is already being multiplied, but basically we're going to just multiply it again. So let's multiply it by 2, which basically means that this one will be twice as large as the previous one. Which is also kind of handy because it takes care of the speed as well, because if it's larger then it's going to be moving faster, I think, or slower, I always forget. So anyway, that is going to be our new speed, which is the exact same property as the previous one, we're just multiplying it before it gets in there. And then for the direction, we want it to go in the opposite way, so we'll put that at 1 because the other one was going -1. So let's just save that out. Okay, and there we go. So now our normal map is kind of glistening around a lot more, but I think I'll introduce, I think, just a little bit on the Y. So for this one, let's say, like if this is a 0.3 or something, then this one here will be a 0.3, something like that. You don't have to do the exact opposite. You can kind of, you know, have different values. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so something like that. Maybe our speed is a little much. I am also going to just change this to a slider, and I'll change the default because it's clearly maybe 0.5. So there's that. So yeah, from now you probably want to just like mess with the tiling amounts and the speeds, just to kind of make sure that it's doing well. Because obviously if you make larger water, then you probably want it to move a little bit quicker. And yeah, obviously play around with the strength. My particular normal map does not work quite well at high strength values because it is just a black and white conversion. But yeah, that's it for the normals. So let's just move on to the actual the waves. And if you've watched my previous tutorial, then I mean the previous one that I made with Amplify Shader Editor, then you kind of already know where this is going a bit. So I'm going to just get down a simple noise, and I'm going to make a vector 2. I'm going to make this a property for now, but this is just a temporary thing. So if I don't even need to rename it, because essentially this will be the amount that I stretch this texture by, which will make sense in a bit, hopefully. So I'll multiply this with what will be our UVs. And again, we want to be using world space. And since we've already created that down here, there's no need to kind of make it again. So I'll just borrow that world space with this. But I probably do want to do it the other way around. I've never actually tried it that way around. It probably still works, to be fair, but you know, best to be safe than sorry. So yeah, now I will get another multiply, and we'll create a vector 1, which will be our actual sort of tiling amount. Basically similar to what we had happening here before we introduced all of the panning, although again we are going to introduce panning. But yeah, essentially it's a lot of the same stuff. In fact, I probably could kind of skip through it, but I won't. So anyway, let's carry on. Vector 1, and convert this one to a property. And so this one will be our actual wave tile. So let's hook that into the multiply. And then for now, we can just hook that straight into the UVs. Things are going to look a bit weird. Also, we don't have any default values set. So let's just go with 1 and 1 for now. And we'll also create a vector 1 property. I know you can just click up here to create these, but I kind of prefer to do it this way. I don't know why. And we'll just hook that into there. And so this one will actually be our wave scale. It's kind of worth keeping this as a property, although entirely up to you. And so for now, let's kind of just get this stuff, and we'll just test this out by throwing it into the emission, maybe. Yeah. So this is basically just to preview it. We're not actually going to keep it there. So let's just save this. And I guess I forgot to give it a default scale, but basically so we can kind of see what's happening here a bit. We don't need this too much right now. I want to create basically a map where I'm going to stretch it and scale it kind of to my liking, because it will be the actual, like the waves, like the way the water will move. So you kind of want, you know, something pretty stretched, but not like super stretched, if that makes any sense. And then yeah, just kind of mess with the scale as well, just to kind of see what works, what doesn't. You don't want anything like too small, but at the same time you don't want something too big either. So the idea here is kind of like what is white will be the waves being up, and what is down will be, you know, the waves. What is down? No, what is darker will be the waves being quite black. I'm completely confusing myself. Hopefully you know what I mean. So yeah, we do want that to be that way. Maybe even something like that. We can try that out. And so what I'm going to do is basically just remember these. In fact, let's just round that one off. So 0.02 and 0.5, because I will never need this number again. So I'm going to just create a vector 2 to replace the property that we made. And so I know it's 0.02, 0.5 on the Y. And so let's replace that, and then just get rid of this vector 2 that we just made. And so now if I hit save, nothing will change, except for we'll just gain some nice real estate over here in our material. Neat. Yeah, okay, so moving on, let's do the panning. And again, this is kind of just the same thing that we had happening here. So we are going to be using like the tiling and offset, and then we're going to having, you know, like the panning and the direction. So a lot of this stuff, again, you can kind of just copy. So we definitely want tiling and offset. We want the time, we do want that, and yeah, we might as well just take everything except for that property there. So let's just take this, and we can probably make that a bit smaller. So let's put this into here, because this is our UVs, and because that's our UVs, we no longer have our original setup going into the UVs of the noise, because we can put it through this tiling and offset node because we need access to this offset. So yeah, we already have the panning going on here. I do want this to just be on, it's either going to be -1 or 1, I think, because I have obviously made this before. We'll keep this as is. But then we do want a vector 1, which will convert to a property, and this will actually control the speed of our waves. So let's convert to property. And then let's just give that a save and see what it looks like. Although again, I think I forgot to give that a default value, so I'll do that now, but I won't bother resaving it. So, oh, I also need to hook it off from the emission. So wave speed, maybe we need a lot faster. Or I think we're going in the wrong direction actually. So it's moving down. So let's find our vector 2 and we'll change that to 0 and we'll put 1 on the Y, and let's see if that helps. Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. And from here, if you did want it to go the other way, then you just minus the speed. So that's pretty handy. So yeah, I'll keep it as that for now. And yeah, we don't want this to go into the emission, but we want this to basically be what controls the position of our verts. And it's worth mentioning, I don't think I mentioned it at the start actually, there's no tessellation here. I don't think Shader Graph supports tessellation yet, so we're only left with the if I go into, oh, there's no shaded wireframe. Interesting. Okay, so if we just see the wireframe here, it is just going to be like the standard, I think they're like a 5x5 or something of the actual quad. So yeah, there's not a lot of geometry here, and that's fine. If you wanted, I think, to use Shader Graph with, you know, some nice kind of high detail waves, then you probably have to import your own mesh with, you know, with a lot sort of denser triangles. But anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, okay, so there's two things we can do with this. I do want to introduce it a bit with the color. So I've taken it out of the emission for now, but what I'm going to do is, so I have a LWRP here, which is the original color that we had, but for now I'm just going to get down a multiply node, and I'm going to multiply this. So multiplying our color, or what was our, you know, final albedo with the noise that we've made. And then that will be our, oh, come on now. I can't seem to click right today. Maybe I am too zoomed out. Yeah, so let's give this a save. And I think I want to introduce a clamp, but let's just see what it looks like. Okay, yeah, so the white's coming through and the darks are coming through. My main issue is the darks are too dark, so I won't expand this window just yet, because let me show you what you can do. You can introduce a clamp in here, and let's put that in there, and then the clamp will go into the multiply instead of just straight through the noise. Basically this is, you know, it's like it will clamp things to a range. At the moment it's 0 to 1, 0 being black, 1 being white, and the black for me is too dark, so let's bump that up to say 0.3, and then we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so yeah, let's change it a bit. Yeah, that'll do for now. So let's expand this out, minimize that guy. So that's for the color, and now we just need something else which will actually plug into the position. And the way that we do this in Shader Graph, it's kind of similar to the way that we do it in Amplify. Like, we still make use of a vector 3, and we're really only controlling the Y value of that vector 3. The only difference is for this one we do actually need to use a world position node, which is just called position, but we do want to set the space of it to object. And in fact, I'll show you what happens if we don't. So let's just put it on world for now. So we need to split this out because again, we really only want to make use of the Y. And the way that we kind of do this is, I mean, obviously, if we were to just put down a vector 3, we have lots of inputs here, and it was a bit of a trial and error. Like, I was just trying to kind of just use one of these. Well, at first I wasn't even trying to use the position node, but the key is always in the vector 3. But the way that Shader Graph handles this is you would split your world position node out and you feed this into a vector 3, but it's only the Y channel that we actually want to do anything with. So we're going to feed the red into X and the blue into Z. And these are basically just like almost null values, but not quite, because this is what I mean where the space being set to world, you'll see things are going to go a bit wonky, but let me show you. Well, let me just complete this whole thing. Basically, we only really need to introduce a multiply and a vector 1, which will convert into a property, and we'll just call this you know, like wave strength. And we'll multiply our noise that we've made by this property. And this is what's being fed into the Y channel of our vector 3. And so let me just hook this straight into position for now. And then let me minimize this because you'll see a lot's going to go wrong. So let's just save this, and that's pretty weird, right? That's yeah, it's pretty weird. So this is why we want this to be object space. So just set that to object and hit save. And there we are. Everything is hunky-dory. The only thing is we haven't actually put any wave strength. So we can just increase that amount here, or set a default value. And if you ever kind of have any issues where you increase the wave strength, but you still get those weird kind of like that, you know, that strange artifact that we had where we were looking at this in world space. For some reason, I don't know why, but if you set the material to transparent and then back to opaque, for some reason it works fine. Although as it happens, we do actually want this to be transparent, and we'll cover that when we start doing the edge foam. So yeah, we might as well now actually just set it to transparent, and we'll just save that out. So now, yeah, there's our waves. Again, it's pretty kind of primitive, but there's not too much else that I can do at the moment with shader graph, so that will kind of just have to do. Speed is maybe a bit too much, but let's move on to the actual kind of edge foam. And I absolutely give full credit to AE Tuts for this, or AE Tuts? No, I don't know. The guy that does the tutorial that I will link in the description, because when I found out that shader graph actually included a surface depth node, I was pretty excited, because that meant that I could actually continue with the water, but for the life of me, I could not work out how to use it. But AE Tuts is clearly smarter than I am, so yeah, a lot of what I'm about to show you is basically copied from his, I forget what it's called, it's like the intersection material thing, but yeah, basically we are only interested in like a portion of that for our actual edge foam. But anyway, enough talking, let's go and make it. So we will start with the elusive scene depth node, which is this is the one that I could not work out how to do. So again, props to AE Tuts. I will put a link to his video in the description, because as far as I'm aware, at least I think he's the first that I've seen that's actually worked this out. I haven't seen anyone else do it. So yeah, we're going to multiply our scene depth with a camera node, and we're going to use the far plane. And I don't know how he worked any of this out. It's pretty cool. Yeah, and then from here, what we're going to do is subtract this with a screen position, but not after we've done some stuff to it. So let's get ourselves a screen position. I think we set this to raw, and we're going to split this out, similar to how we did the split before. So yeah, split, because we only want to make use of the alpha. So alpha is going to get subtracted. So alpha subtracted. So now this one will be our, we'll make a vector 1, and it's going to be the, essentially this one is actually the depth, but for our purposes, we'll call it foam distance. And we'll set a default of, I don't know, 0.3 or something. And so that goes into our subtract that we made earlier. So yeah, it's all pretty cool. And now from here, we do want to 1 similar to kind of how we built this in the Amplify Shader Editor tutorial. We did, have to include that 1 to kind of flip the black from on the white. Flip the black and the white, I mean, not on the white. Anyway, so we're going to multiply that, and this one will be the actual the strength. So we're going to control kind of how far out the distance will go, although it is based on the depth of an object in the water. So don't think of it as like spreading across the water, but rather like spreading down the water. But it gives a nice illusion anyway. So this one will be the actual strength of it, so it doesn't matter how in or out, we can just control the actual strength of it. So convert to property, renames. This one will actually be foam strength, and I'll give this a default of 1. And I think at least we're going to need to clamp this, but I can't quite remember. Let me just bring this up here for a second, because this is being fed into our emission. We could kind of incorporate it into the albedo, but it's kind of just easier to put it into emission. So yeah, I only moved this up there so it was just easier to kind of see. So yeah, I think we might need a clamp, but let's just give this a save and see how it looks. Yeah, so we definitely need a clamp. So I'll just put this in here actually. Create a clamp, minimize that. Let's throw that into the emission, and then we'll just bring this guy down here and we'll clamp off this. Pretty cool. So there's the distance, or the what would be, I guess, the depth, and then the strength, which, you know, so it's kind of regardless of the depth. So yeah, keep it like that for now. And I'll keep the window here just in this small mode for now, because I want to show you basically how you can turn this into a seafoam. And so just as an example, we're going to multiply before the clamp. So we'll multiply and we'll just get a color. I won't make this a property yet because I'll just change it to, let's say, a red, and I'll feed that in. And there you can see it's red. And if I were to change this to, you know, pink or blue or whatever, and then save it out, it would also change that. So if you can change the color, then you can basically turn it into a texture. So we'll get rid of the color, and instead we will replace that with a texture 2D. So let's get ourselves a sample texture 2D. And then we will actually want the texture 2D asset. We'll convert this to a property. Rename that, so this will be the actual the foam texture, and I might as well just put that up there actually. And we can just hook this straight into the multiply that we had. In fact, this is a, well, I will be using just a black and white texture, so I only need the red channel for that. So let me just save this and then assign the texture. Yeah, so now it's been replaced with a texture. Obviously we need to kind of change the tiling, so easy enough. We'll just get down a tiling and offset node, put that into the UVs, and then we'll just create another vector 1, and then we'll convert this to a property, and this will be our actual tiling amount for these edge foam stuff. And it helps if you put it into tiling, not into the UVs. So let me just correct that. That'll do. So yeah, we have a default of 1, but obviously you can make this whatever you want. And also, you know, if you wanted to, well, I'm kind of running a bit out of space here. If you wanted this texture to pan, much like all of the others, then, I mean, it's the exact same thing that we've already done. You know, you introduce the tiling and offset with time, multiplied by a vector, divide by a vector. You know, it's the exact same stuff that we have there. So you could even, if you wanted, just copy that. Yeah, okay, so we're coming close to the end here. Let's just sort out this foam strength and distance of stuff, because yeah, okay, so we are very nearly done. We just need to introduce the actual depth, I think, unless I'm forgetting something, which, yeah, is always likely. Yeah, so we're already using scene depth here to generate our edge foam for the water. So we might as well kind of reuse what we can from here to control the actual depth of the objects that enter the water. So let's just start by getting a subtract node. Which will basically be in place of, like, I think this subtract node, because we have here the screen position that goes into a split, and then we subtract it by a property here, which we're controlling for the foam, but we don't want to use the same property. So instead of feeding into this subtract, we'll just grab this split and we will put that into the subtract that we have up here, and then we'll create a new vector 1, and this one will just be called depth, because I was saying before about how technically this foam distance was the depth, but we're just kind of using it to kind of give that illusion of the actual distance of the foam. So yeah, now this one is actually depth, so it's, you know, it's correctly named at least. So we can put that into there, and then rather than like copying other stuff, what we can actually just do is again just kind of subtract, and we can put the first subtract into the B slot of the second, and we can just grab the multiply from the scene depth here, So that will go up into there. So this is, it's using the exact same things minus all of the stuff that we don't need, because this was sort of strictly for the foam. So it's pretty, it's pretty optimal. And then we'll just use our friend the clamp again. And now this, it looks messy as all hell, but so this will eventually, in fact, well, not eventually, it will right now, we need to kind of attach it onto our albedo. So we're going to do that with a loop. And like I was mentioning before about with the Fresnel, where you have like the white and the black, and then you have your mask to define what is white and what is black. That's what we're going to use the depth for, because basically what is sort of in the water and intersecting with it will be white, and then everything else will be black. And so we want to be able to kind of control what that is, because we want things that aren't in the water to just have the same color and the same effect as the water itself. So what that really means is basically we grab our current albedo, which is everything that we have at the moment, and we stick that into the B slot, because if it's represented as black and not intersecting the water, then we just want it to look like the same water that we have right now. And if it is intersecting, this is where on my other tutorial we introduced the refraction, and we kind of controlled everything with a grab pass. I haven't quite worked out how to do that in Shader Graph yet. I know it's possible, I'm lazy, so sorry about that. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to just use a color node, and we'll convert this to a property, and we'll just call this depth color. So the least we can do is kind of control the color of items that go into the water. So let's throw that into the albedo, and let's hit save on this and make sure I haven't done anything too weird. There we go. Seems to kind of work, although our depth is at a 0, so we probably want to bring that up a bit. But we can control the color of what enters the water, and so I kind of I prefer to go with a darker color of the water itself. Lighter also kind of works depending on what it is you're going for. And then obviously we can control the actual depth amount, kind of as sort of illustrated here. We can kind of see things further. And so like I was saying with my Amplify Shader tutorial, we wouldn't have to worry about like recoloring something if it entered the water. We could actually just kind of take this piece as is, even if it was a completely different color. Like if we just create a new material here, and I just call this red. So if I were to put this on this sphere, basically our depth doesn't care what color or what texture or anything is on our actual intersecting materials. It will just render the depth as it pleases, whereas in the Amplify version that wasn't the case. It would actually, you could see the redness through the water, and it would, we'd also have the nice refraction going on. So yeah, currently that is a no-go for Shader Graph, but as I say, I'm pretty sure it is possible. It's also worth mentioning, I think at least, I think I'm using the HD render pipeline, but I'm not doing anything here specific to that, so it should work just fine. In fact, I think like the only complicated thing here really is the edge foam stuff, and I got that from AE Tuts. Again, full credit to that guy. And I think he's using the lightweight and I'm using HD, so there's your answer. It's it works in both. But yeah, I think that's it. I don't think I'm forgetting anything else, but I might be. But yeah, let me know if I've forgotten anything, but otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I know it's been a long time coming. Lots of people keep asking me to update the original Shader Graph water tutorial, and this is kind of it. There's still lots of stuff we could kind of add on, and maybe as Shader Graph progresses, I can keep kind of coming back to this and iterating on it. But yeah, for now, finito. I will see you in the next one.